Chapter 15. Excitement fluttered in Kate's stomach when Sunday morning dawned. Though the social wasn't until after church, she had gotten everything ready the night before. She pulled back the sides of her raven locks and secured them with combs, letting the rest of the hair flow freely around her shoulder. As this was her first social and after church, she had picked one of her nicer dresses, unsure of what to expect. When she was satisfied with her appearance, she glided into the main room. Jesse looked up from the table where he was reading.
"You look lovely, Kate."
She did not miss the appreciation in his voice and twirled for him. "I'm not overdressed?" He chuckled.
"Maybe a little, but I don't think anyone will mind. Are you ready then?"
"Wait, one more thing." Kate hurried back into the bedroom and grabbed the recipe cards she had written out the night before for the recipe swap. It had been a painstaking and tiring process, and she'd had to stop often to shake out her cramped hand. But she had a stack of cards to swap for today, and she was excited to obtain some new recipes to try for Jesse. She just hoped she had enough. Having never attended a social, she wasn't sure exactly what to expect. With the papers in hand, she hurried back to the kitchen and grabbed the bread she had baked the previous day to share. "Now I'm ready." Jesse smiled and shut his book.
"Let's get going then."
Kate could not keep the bounce from her step as she followed Jesse to the wagon.
"A little excited, are you?"
he asked, helping her up. "I can't help it. Not that I don't enjoy your company, but it has been a few days since I have been able to enjoy the company of other women, and being able to obtain new recipes is delightful."
"I like your current recipes, but I have no doubt that anything you make will be delicious."
Kate felt her cheeks burn again, and she wondered if she would ever tire of hearing Jesse compliment her. The rest of the ride into town was quiet, but far from uncomfortable. The silence that sat between them now was a companionable one that neither felt the need to fill with unnecessary words. They arrived at the church and found their seats. Kate was a little surprised to not see Ellen, and she hoped her friend would make an appearance at the social. Though Kate normally loved church, she found it hard to sit through the service today. She was too excited to socialize with other young women her age, and she couldn't remember the last time she had danced. Jesse turned to her as she fidgeted in the seat yet again, and smiled as he whispered,
"The time doesn't go any faster the more you move."
"I know, I'm sorry." Kate forced her hands to remain still in her lap for the remainder of the service. When the final hymn was sung, she stood and glanced eagerly towards the door, but a parade of people standing and chatting blocked the path to the exit. She was forced to swallow her impatience once more, post a smile on her face, and exchange pleasantries as the line slowly filed out of the church. As the social was being held in the barn, not far from the church, and the weather was fair, they decided to walk, but Kate had to stop at the wagon to grab her bread and cards. Then they joined the rest of the people heading toward the barn. It appeared nearly everyone in Sage Creek came out for socials. As they neared the entrance of the barn, Sarah waved from the doorway. "Kate," she called, hurrying over. "I'm so glad you were able to make it." "Me too." Kate smoothed her skirt with her free hand as she glanced around. "Though I'm a little nervous." "There's no need to be. I promise this will be a friendly crowd, right, Deputy?" Sarah turned to Jesse.
"Yes, ma'am."
Jesse nodded.
"The bartender has agreed to make sure no one from the saloon wanders over after too many drinks."
Kate knew he was referring to James, who still seemed to be harboring a grudge against them both. But she didn't mind. Today she was going to enjoy herself and not worry about James. "Come on." Sarah tugged on Kate's arm. Kate looked to Jesse, not sure what the protocol was. He nodded and smiled.
Go on. I'm going to walk around and check the surroundings, and then I'll come find you.
After saying goodbye to Jesse, she followed Sarah into the barn. There was a small band playing the banjo and harmonica on one side of the barn for the couples that wanted to dance. At the far back was a table filled with food, and on the left, tables had been set up for the recipe swap and general mingling. "Let's drop your bread off first and then grab a table." Sarah pulled Kate toward the back. Kate laughed and followed Sarah's lead. For the first time in a long time, she felt lighthearted and carefree. "Kate, oh, I'm so glad you're here." Kate turned to see Ellen coming toward them. "I wanted to apologize for James's behavior the other day." She pulled Kate in for a hug. "When I heard what happened, I wanted to come and see you right away, but Iris has been sick." Kate's hand flew to her chest. "Oh no, is she all right?" "Yes, I think it's just exhaustion. She had been going non-stop to try and forget Pauline's death, but when I finally made her take a break, her body told her she needed more rest. I think it's partly why James has been drinking more lately. I'm afraid he thinks he's going to lose her too. I was hoping maybe you could pray for all of us. I've been doing it, but I'm so new to this that I'm not sure I'm doing it right." Kate placed a hand on Ellen's arm. "There's no wrong way to do it, but I'd be happy to, Ellen." She glanced at Sarah before turning back to Ellen. "Why don't you join Sarah and me for the recipe swap?" Ellen glanced over at the other young girl, but she shook her head. "No, I may be young at heart, but I think you need to be with women closer to your own age today. You girls have fun." Kate felt badly as her friend walked away, but before she could react, Sarah pulled her over to the recipe swap area. "What did you bring?" The excitement bubbling in Sarah's voice was contagious. "My mother's famous cornbread recipe." Kate pulled her cards out. "What did you bring?" "A bread pudding recipe. I'm a much better baker than a cook, which is odd since my folks own the cafe, right?" "No, I understand that," Kate said. "My mother loved to sew, but she always dragged me to the general store with her when she picked out fabric. Sometimes she would spend hours looking through the new fabric. I hated sewing growing up. I am still not very good at it." "But perhaps there's hope for me yet?" Sarah asked with a small smile. Kate chuckled. "Wait until you get married and have to be the cook. You'll learn real fast." The girls laid out their cards and then meandered through the tables, scanning and picking up cards for other mouth-watering recipes. Kate was pleased to find a few for main dishes, as that was her weakness. When they had gathered all the cards, they walked to the back table to try some of the tantalizing food. The display was eclectic, with everything from chili to savory desserts. After filling a plate with a little of everything, they headed back toward the table, but Jesse intercepted them on the way.
"Perhaps Miss Miller can put your plate on the table for you, as I'd like to dance with you."
He took her plate and passed it to Sarah before propelling Kate to the dance floor. "I can't remember the last time I danced," Kate began, as Jesse moved her in a circle around the floor.
"I've never been very good."
A look of chagrin crossed his features.
"I hope I don't step on your toes."
"Well, even if you do, I think I could forgive you." Kate smiled up at him, enjoying the feel of his hand on her waist. He said nothing, but as he returned her smile, Kate realized again how handsome he was. His nose wasn't exactly straight, but it complemented his strong jaw, and the warmth of his brown eyes softened the chiseled lines of his face. As the slower beat of the first song ended and a faster one began, Jesse didn't let go of her, but upped his tempo in turning her around the floor. He managed to only step on her toes once, but the look of intense concentration on his face tickled Kate so much that when the song ended, she found herself flushed and out of breath. "Can we go outside for a minute of fresh air?" she asked, fanning her face with her hand. Jesse nodded, and taking her arm, led her outside. The cooler air tamed the heat on her face and neck, but did nothing for her parched throat. She cleared her throat, trying to ease the dryness that had taken root. A look of concern crossed Jesse's features.
"Would you like some punch? I would be happy to fetch you some."
"I would love that," Kate said. "If you do not mind, I think I will stay out here to catch my breath and cool down." As Jesse ducked back into the barn, Kate leaned against the old rail fence and closed her eyes. Her trip out west may not have started on the best foot, but she was certainly content with it today.
"You're a hard woman to find, Miss Whidby."
Kate's eyes snapped open at the dark, throaty voice that did not belong to her husband. Brown eyes met her gaze, but they were not the warm chocolate pools of Jesse's eyes. They were instead a harsh and unforgiving brown like the desert, and they looked at her over the barrel of a Colt revolver. "My name isn't Whidby any longer." Kate forced bravado into her voice. "It's Jennings."
"You think just because you married someone else you don't belong to me?"
A cold, cruel sound escaped his throat, turning Kate's blood cold.
"I paid for you to come here. I own you. And if you were stupid enough to marry someone else, then it will be easy enough to end his life and free you up again."
"Why do you want a wife anyway?" Kate retorted. "Did you expect I would start robbing with you, or just turn a blind eye?"
"I expected you would do what I told you to do. You would cook my meals and clean my house and fulfill your other wifely duties."
Kate shivered at the insinuation in his words. She could not imagine ever sharing a house with the man in front of her, much less a bed. "You were stupid to come here. The sheriff and his men are looking for you." Bill Easterly shook his head and chuckled.
"I'm not stupid by any means. Do you think I don't know there are men looking for me? That's why I chose now. Everyone is inside at the festivities, including the sheriff and his men. So there's no one patrolling today. Once I found you, it was just a matter of playing the waiting game. Now, let's get moving."
He motioned with the revolver for her to move. Kate glanced back toward the barn. It was too loud inside for anyone to hear her if she screamed, at least not before Easterly took care of her. But Jesse had just gone in for drinks. What was taking him so long?
"I don't think she'll be going anywhere with you."
Kate sighed with relief at the sound of Jesse's voice, but it was short-lived as Bill grabbed her arm and swung her against his chest as he turned around. She saw just a flicker of fear enter Jesse's eyes as she was made into a human shield.
"I think I'll be making the rules here," Bill snarled. "Besides, why does she even matter to you? I'm sure you only married her for convenience."
The smell radiating off Bill was sour and acrid, and Kate could feel his sweat from the arm wrapped around her seeping into her dress.
"She does matter to me."
Jesse's voice was even, and he met Kate's eyes for a moment before returning his attention to Easterly.
"But more than that, you are also responsible for killing my fiancée and one of our deputies. So I'm taking you in one way or another." "Your fiancée?"
Easterly paused, as if trying to remember.
"Oh, you mean the pretty blonde who was shot when we robbed the bank. I can see why you'd be upset about that. She looked like she could keep a man happy. Unfortunate, but those things happen from time to time."
Kate saw the vein in Jesse's neck tighten. She had no idea how good of a shot he was, or how accurate Bill was. but she also wasn't sure how much longer Jesse could keep his composure, with Bill speaking ill of Pauline. What she was sure of, though, was that due to her height, Bill's left arm wasn't able to reach across her chest enough to pin her right arm down, and she knew that his right arm had recently been injured. She just hoped Jesse would remember and understand her gesture. When Kate was sure she had Jesse's eye, she flicked her eyes to the right in hopes he would remember Bill's injury. Then, closing her eyes and praying, she flung her right arm up as hard and as fast as she could. When it collided with Bill's right arm, she felt his left loosen, and she dropped to the ground as one, then two gunshots went off. Kate clasped her hands over her ears as they began to ring from the noise, and looked around. Bill lay on the ground behind her, a pool of red spreading across his chest. His eyes still held a look of shock. She turned to where Jesse should be standing, but he was also on the ground. "Jesse!" She scrambled over to him, coughing as the gun smoke filled her lungs. There was no blood on his chest, but she ran her hands over it all the same, feeling frantically for a wound. When her hands reached his face, his eyes fluttered and then opened.
"Kate Whidby, that was either the dumbest thing or the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do."
Kate smacked his chest, causing him to grunt. "Do not scare me like that. I thought you were dead, and my name is Kate Jennings."
"So it is," he said with a smile.
Moments later, they were surrounded by people as half the town spilled out of the barn and peppered them with questions. Jeb and another man helped remove the body of Bill Easterly, as Sheriff Johnson helped Jesse up. "You're bleeding," Kate gasped as she saw a red spot form in his sleeve.
"It's just a scratch."
Jesse offered her an encouraging smile.
"You knocked his arm wide enough that his bullet just grazed me." "We still better get it looked at," Sheriff Johnson said. "Everyone else can return to the social. The danger here is taken care of."
The crowd stepped back a few feet, but no one seemed eager to hurry back into the barn. The excitement still hung in the air, and the people murmured amongst each other, trying to guess what had happened. Doc Moore emerged from the crowd and led the way to his office, Emma following close behind.
"Let's get that shirt off, Jesse, and take a look at that arm."
He motioned for Jesse to take a seat on the cot in the room. Jesse had barely felt the graze, but as he lifted his arm to begin unbuttoning his shirt, an achy sensation descended on his arm. He tried not to grimace, but from the look on Kate's face as she watched, he hadn't been entirely successful. After another few jabs of pain, he managed to get his sleeve off. While Doc Moore examined and cleaned the wound, Jesse's eyes drifted to Kate. She was so unlike Pauline, not only from her dark hair and blue eyes, but to her personality. He couldn't imagine Pauline doing what Kate had done. Though he still loved Pauline, he figured he always would. He realized that little room in his heart for Kate had grown as well. Maybe in not quite the same way, but Jesse thought their marriage could not only be successful, but happy and fulfilling as well.
"You're very lucky,"
Doc Moore said as he wound the bandage around Jesse's arm.
"The bullet missed your bone, but it did go through a little of your muscle. It will heal, but you may be sore for a month or so, and you should take it easy with this arm for at least that long." "Yes, sir."
Jesse nodded. He was glad to see the fear had gone from Kate's eyes at the doctor's proclamation of his health.
"I know you said you weren't injured, Kate,"
Doc Moore said, turning to her.
"but I'd like to check your ears and do a quick examination to be sure."
As Kate nodded, Jesse and the sheriff exited the office to give her some privacy.
"I'm sure Ellen will let him know, but I suppose I better find James and tell him we got Pauline's killer," the sheriff said.
"Actually, sir, would it be all right if I did that?" Jesse asked.
We've had our share of disagreements, but I'd really like to be the one to give him the news."
The sheriff nodded, and a moment later the door opened and Kate exited.
"I'll walk with you," Sheriff Johnson said, "as I'm sure he's in the saloon, and Miss Kate doesn't need to be in there."
"Where are we going?" Kate asked.
"To tell James we got Easterly," Jesse said.
"What about the last guy, though?" Kate glanced from Jesse to the sheriff and back.
"We won't give up looking for him, but I have no doubt that Easterly was responsible for Pauline's death, so we can at least give James some peace," the sheriff said, stepping into the saloon.
Kate placed a hand on Jesse's arm. "I know you probably know better than I do, but I am not sure we should say anything to James until we know the third man is taken care of. What if he decides to come back or find new men to ride with him?" Jesse placed his hand over Kate's. He could understand her hesitation, and he harbored a little of it himself. He had actually forgotten there was a third man, but if Easterly had killed one partner, perhaps he had killed the other as well.
"It will be okay. You heard what the sheriff said. We will not stop looking for him."
A moment later, they heard James's deep voice protesting.
"I don't want to see Jesse." "You will for this," came the sheriff's voice.
James's sullen face appeared in the doorway, followed by Sheriff Johnson.
"James, I know you blame me for Pauline's death," Jesse began, "but I promised her I would find her killer. I wanted to let you know that we did. His name was Bill Easterly, and he came here tonight. But with Kate's help," he flashed her a smile, "we were able to outsmart him. He's dead, James. It's over."
James looked from Jesse to Kate to the sheriff. Though he had obviously been drinking, his face sobered.
"He's dead. You really got him."
Jesse nodded, surprised to see liquid forming in James's eyes.
"Good,"
James said, and walked back into the saloon. Jesse watched him go and shook his head.
"Now you two go home and get some rest,"
Sheriff Johnson said to Jesse and Kate.
"But I want you both at the office tomorrow to give your account of what happened. I'll make sure James gets home." "Yes, sir."
As Jesse turned to Kate, he held out his good hand.
"I guess we better follow orders and get on home."
"There's no place I'd rather be." Kate smiled up at him as she put her hand in his.